morning. Welcome to the Huntington Museum of Art. We are so happy that you've come to see our third grade tour, to see our exhibits. No, we can't be together in person, but we're going to work this through together. Everybody should have a kit that they're going to use for their tour today. In that kit, you're going to find a ruler. You're going to find 3 colored pencils and a funny little pencil with an eraser on it. You're going to find a book because today you become authors. You're going to write the story of your visit to the museum. So if you guys are ready, I would like to ask you to take your book and open it up to the very first page. And it says, "This book belongs to." Please write your name there because you are an author and you need to sign your book. And as soon as you've done that, we'll get started. Our first stop today is the Glass and Decorative Arts Gallery. There's lots of pieces of glass in the museum collection, but I would like to show you a couple that are my favorites. The first one is this red and white ball back in the corner of this case. And of course, you can't play with a glass ball, but all those red swirls are said to capture witches. So if a witch comes by your house, she gets caught up in those swirls and she can't come in and she can't get to you. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I have 2 in my garden just to be safe. And that piece is basically decorative. It's just meant to be looked at and enjoyed. The glass can also be made to be functional, to have a use. So my other favorite piece is this big green bowl that looks like a cowboy hat turned upside down. And you will never believe what they did with that. They put milk in it from the cow and then put it in a creek and let water flow around it to keep their milk cold because they didn't have refrigerators and they didn't have ice boxes back in the 1700s. Sometimes when artists are making decorative glass pieces, they look to nature, to things they see around them to create their pieces. The artist who made the pieces in this case is named Kelsey Murphy, and she made them in a West Virginia glass company called Pilgrim Glass. But look what she's done. She's picked out a bird and a fish, and there's fish down there and butterflies. She took her inspiration from what she could see around her and then turned it into a piece of very beautiful decorative glass. So glass has been really important for the state of West Virginia, and I think it's really special to know that there used to be hundreds of glass plants in the state. And the reason was we have excellent sand, because you guys know that glass is actually made from sand, but you have to melt it at like 2,000 degrees. It takes a very special sand, and West Virginia has a lot of that. We also have wonderful ways to melt the sand. We have coal and natural gas and timber. So we have a way to build the fires to melt the sand down. I think more importantly, we have the rivers, because manufacturers can put their glass on a boat and ship it just about anywhere in the world. And also we have people who were inventive and thought of new ways to use the sand and the glass that they were creating. And they needed special tools. Sometimes they would take something called a blowpipe, stick this into the hot glass, get a bubble on the end, and then blow bubbles, basically, until the glass got as big as they needed it. They could either leave it round, like the witch's ball, or they could put the ball of glass down inside a mold like this, and blow on the glass until it completely filled the mold and they had the shape that they wanted. So now that we've looked at some glass in the cases and we've talked about it a little bit, I have a project for you to work on. In your book that you got in your kit, I need for you to turn to the page that says, "Welcome to the Glass and Decorative Arts Gallery," and has a series of lines on the paper. What we're going to do with that is we're going to create a bar graph. And hopefully you've done some bar graphs already. If not, this will be fun. You'll be learning something new. A bar graph can take a lot of information and condense it down so that you can see very easily what you're doing. And it will look something like this. You can just look at it and see what you have the most of any object. So we're going to create a bar graph based on one of the cases of glass here in the gallery. I'm going to be counting blue glass in this case today, and I'm going to use my blue pencil. So if you have a blue pencil that you want to use, I would like for you to do that. We're going to look at cups, bowls, and pitchers. But first, we have to set up a graph. So if you look at your graph, you'll see the word axis, A-X-I-S, at the bottom of your page. That is your x-axis, and that's going to tell you what we're counting. So you'll see right above that, it says cups, bowls, and pitchers. And if you look at your vertical line, there's the word axis again. That's your y-axis, and that tells you how many you have of certain things. So we're going to set up our bar graph on this. So would you please label your x-axis and your y-axis. And now let's count pitchers. And you guys know what pitchers are. They're the things you pour milk from, so they have a handle on the side. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4 blue pitchers. So if you take your ruler and put it right over the word pitcher, and then count up 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, and draw your line like that. And then you can come over to the side just a little bit and draw one right beside it, and then color that in so you have a bar. And now I would like for you to go ahead and do the bowls and cups. Welcome to my Near Eastern Gallery. We come around the museum and we're in a room full of all kinds of objects. There are things made of metal, there are things made of clay, there are things that were meant to be beautiful, there are things that were meant to be functional, there are things that were meant for defense. But the one thing that ties all these things together, and some were made hundreds and thousands of years ago and some were made recently, is that they are covered with pattern. And I bet you know that pattern happens when something repeats, and repeats over and over again. So what I'd like you to do is look at this rug and see if you can find some patterns in there. And the first one that I want you to look at is rectangles, because the whole rug is a rectangle. And then there's a border that goes around that's a rectangle, and another border that goes around that's a rectangle, and yet another border that goes around that's a rectangle. It draws you in so that you're looking to see what's going on in the middle of the rug. And then start looking for the shapes that repeat. There's squares, there's circles, there's triangles. Look for the colors that repeat. There's red, there's green, there's blue, there's yellow. They use them over and over again to create a pattern so that it's a beautiful object. So this is the Damascus room in the Tuma Gallery. And I wanted to show you this room particularly because of the furniture. Look at the patterns in that furniture. All the little pieces of something that looks silvery, all the wood, all the shapes that are repeated over and over again. And I wanted to tell you about that stuff that looks silvery. It's actually the inside of a seashell. It comes from an animal called an abalone. And somewhere along the way in history, people figured out they could use the inside of this beautiful shell to decorate their furniture or decorate their ceilings. But now here's the cool thing about this shell. It used to be the home of a sea snail called an abalone. And it was on top, and a snail was underneath, just like with snails we see in our gardens. And the cool thing is, this is the snail's exoskeleton. This is what protects him. The snail stays under there, and this keeps him safe. I just thought it was kind of interesting to show you guys how they use the shells. What I would like you to look at now in this gallery are some pieces of ceramic. And I hope you know that ceramic is made of clay and then glaze over it to make beautiful designs. Well, I'd like for you to look at this plate. Down here at the bottom has blue and green and a reddish color on it. And I'd like you to look carefully at the patterns. Look how the artist took circles and arranged them in triangles to make bunches of grapes. Look how the artist took this little line that goes like this and repeated it all the way around the plate to create a design. And look at the pattern of the triangles all around the edge of the plate. It gives you another pattern to look at. And now I have a job for you to do. If you will turn your book to the page that looks like this, has a plate on it, has the word ISNIC up at the top. I would like for you to take your colored pencils, and I would like for you to create your own plate. Create a repeating pattern on your plate. And when you finish that, you can turn to the next page and create your own row. We've made our way around the museum now to the C. Fred Edwards Conservatory. And the conservatory is a very large room where we have things like tropical plants, tropical fishes, frogs, all kinds of interesting things. But the thing that ties them all together is they have to stay warm, so we keep them in a special room. I'd like to introduce you to our saltwater aquarium. This is actually an ocean habitat. It's a saltwater coral reef. We've got fishes that normally would live in the ocean, swimming in it. And if you look very carefully, you can see how their fins move to help propel them through the water. If you look carefully, you'll also notice that this coral reef is beautiful with colors and with repeated patterns. So we still have pattern, even though we're not looking at a piece of art right now. We're looking at a piece of nature. We can still see lots of patterns, lots of repetition of color. One of the other creatures that lives in our conservatory is called an oxolothal, and it's a salamander from Mexico. Our oxolothals are lightly colored, and they have these red feathery things coming off the sides of their heads. And those red feathery things are their gills, and they use those gills to get oxygen from the water. They don't breathe the air like we do. They get their oxygen from the water, just like fishes. And they're also like fishes a little bit in that they are cold-blooded, which means that they get their body temperature from their immediate surroundings. And they're also, oxolothals are vertebrates. They have a spine, just like the fishes. So they're both very interesting creatures. While we're here in the conservatory, we're going to be thinking about estimating things. And I bet you know that an estimate is the very best guess that you can make. So if you will turn your book to the page that says, "Welcome to the Conservatory," and have some questions on the page. And you will also need your pencil, the one with the funny little eraser. The very first thing it asks you to do is estimate the temperature of the conservatory. And that might be kind of hard to do because you're not here, but let me tell you about the place we're in. The plants that live here don't like to get cold, and they don't like to get too hot. So what do you think the temperature in here might be that would keep the plants happy? Think about it for a second and then write that number down. Do you think it's 110 degrees or 45 degrees? Think for a minute and write that down. The next thing it asks you to do is measure the temperature in the conservatory itself. And it gives you two places, Fahrenheit and Celsius. We're going to be doing, it'll still be the same temperature in here. We're just going to record it in a different unit. So if we look at the Fahrenheit side, it says that it is 68 degrees. So on your paper where it says Fahrenheit, can you write 68 so that you know that 68 degrees on that scale? And on the Celsius scale, it says that it is 18. So you would write 18 by Celsius. So it's really the temperature hasn't changed, but the way we're measuring it has. The next thing on your worksheet says to estimate the length of a banana leaf. This is a banana plant. I'm going to show you on my tape measure that this is 12 inches. I'll lay it down right by this leaf, but you can see that leaf goes a lot further. So how much more do you think? How many more inches do you think this leaf is? Think about what you see, and then write down your best estimate for how long this leaf is in inches. Okay? And then we're also going to use Like we use Celsius and Fahrenheit for the temperature, we're going to use centimeters as well. So this is, it's 12 inches, it's 30 centimeters. So how many more centimeters do you think you need? And now I will measure it for you. And it turns out to be 29 inches long, which is also 73 centimeters. So could you write 29 and 73 on your paper? Some of the other creatures that we have living in our conservatory are blue poison dart frogs and black and yellow bumblebee poison dart frogs. These little guys are amphibians. They're also cold-blooded. And they live in these special terrariums. Now, the really neat thing about our blue and yellow frogs is Dr. Mike, who works here, feeds them fruit flies dusted with vitamin powder. So they're really not poisonous. But if they lived in the jungle and ate their normal food, they have a poison that comes through their skin. And that's why they're called poison dart frogs. The last thing we're going to do in the conservatory is talk about the provision tree. We're going to talk about the circumference of its trunk. Circumference means around, how far around. So we're going to measure the tree's waist, basically. So I want you to look at this tree and see if you can figure out how big around it might be and make your best estimate of how big around in inches you think this tree might be. It turns out it's 17 inches around. So on your paper, if you would write 17 inches, 17 by the word inches, and that's 43 centimeters. So would you please write 43 where it says centimeters? And once again, we're using two different ways to get the same measurement. Before we leave the conservatory, I would like you to look at the piece of glass that we have in our fish pond. It's a sculpture by artist named Dale Chipley. It was made to go in here in this room, so it looks like the plants and something growing out from the water. And I'll bet you can't estimate how many pieces of glass are in this sculpture. Think for a second, look at this piece and see what you think. There are 352 individual pieces of glass in this sculpture. And if you look a little more carefully, you can see there's a pattern that's formed by the way the different colors are used and the way they're looking. Welcome to the Education Gallery. While we're in here today, we're going to create an art project. We're going to create a patchwork fish. Sort of thinking about patchwork quilts that we have in West Virginia that have lots of patterns on them. So I need for you to turn your book to the page that has a fish in the fishbowl. Now I'm going to use a larger one so you can see how our project is going to work. The first thing you have is this fish made out of dotted lines. Would you please get your regular pencil, the little one with an eraser on it, and connect all those dots so your fish has a solid line. Your next step is to take your ruler, lay it down on your fishbowl from top to bottom. Using your pencil, draw one line. And then move your pencil and draw a second line. And notice it did not touch the first one. And then move your ruler and draw a third line so that you have 3 straight lines through your fishbowl and your fish, and 1, 2, 3, 4 places in the bowl. Then this is the hard part. You have to choose one colored pencil. This is the hard part. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the fish's lips. And we're going to color everything that's inside the line your color. And after you've done that, you're going to move to the next section of your fishbowl and color everything that's outside the fish. The same color, don't change your colors. So you've got to place it above the fish and a place below the fish. In the third section, you're going to color everything that's inside the fish. And then in the last section, you'll color everything that's outside the fish. And that will give you your patchwork fish. And the very last and most important step of all is to put your sticky eyeball on so your fish can see its way out of the fish bowl.